It is Monday, November 17th, 2025. I'm meteorologist Brian Shields. I'll be traveling through as many spots of Jamaica as I can, hopefully able to put out some videos. If you're subscribed, you'll get those notifications when those videos can come out. So heads up in Jamaica. There'll be a lot of hugs coming your way. So you've been warned. With that said, I'm also watching that December outlook. We've got a system here, bigger systems rolling through again in the short term. The Eastern Caribbean, our rain chances going to go up. So I want to track that in this video, but I also want to take a look at that long-term outlook from Canada, the U.S. into the Caribbean, where there'll be some cold outbreaks, a snow potential, north of course, south where we could deal with some flooding in parts of the Caribbean. So I want to show you that early December outlook, just kind of the early call on what to expect next month. But watching a lot of rain that is going to build up here. We're going to monitor this. Yesterday in Barbados, for example, we had some of the rain moving in. I've been watching the comments over the next few days on this weather community. You can put your location, what you've got going on weather-wise, that sort of thing as we continue to build this weather community. Now, let's get a look here, and I'm going to take you around from south to north. This here, the December rain outlook to give us a feel of what we can expect. Where you see these greens and the blues, above average rainfall. Where you see this yellow shading in here, below average rain, drier than normal conditions. Let's take the Bahamas and Florida, for example. You see the yellow. Doesn't mean we're going to be completely dry, right? That's why sometimes I mention, even with the hurricane season, those forecasts they put out could be really misconstrued. They don't really do anyone good. This doesn't mean we're not going to get rain in these spots, right? It just means below average rain. Same thing down here. It doesn't mean it's going to rain all the time. It just means above average rain. So you get the idea. You take a look, parts of Central America swinging back throughout much of the Caribbean, especially the Eastern Caribbean and parts of the Northern Caribbean, increased rain. But anywhere from really Cuba north, it looks to be drier than average, including the Southeast U.S., and we'll cover the rest of the U.S. in a second, the Southeast U.S. as we work our way through December. That gives you a feel of some of the rain. Now, as far as the temperature outlook goes, it looks like the rest of this month, even into December and January, above average temperatures. Now, with that said, that includes the Southeast U.S. through the Gulf, back through the Caribbean. Temperatures should be a little bit above average. Nothing super crazy. And again, it doesn't mean we're not going to have chilly nights like we had last week as we get fronts moving in. That's why, again, the seasonal outlooks could be kind of very misconstrued. We're going to have some cool nights in spots. We'll be watching the fronts, but overall, above average temperatures. That's what we're looking at. Now, watching this ties into things. This time of year, of course, the water temperatures are cooling down. They're still relatively warm as we get back through the Caribbean, as we would expect, coming off of summer, deeper into autumn. Now, I mentioned, here's the key, right? In the Caribbean, I mentioned, the first thing I mentioned was the above average rain in through here with water temperatures that are still warm. And actually, they're running a little bit above average for even this time of year. That kind of feeds into things. So we have extra rain, warm water temperatures. The concern with that will be the water temperatures could give a little extra energy to any areas of rain that we see in the Caribbean. So the concern will be not only increased rain, but the significant chance of some flooding, right? We're going to have to monitor that as we get into December. And that fits what we've had the last few years, where we've had significant flood events in parts of Jamaica, back toward parts of the Eastern Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago. So we need to watch out for that flood threat in the Caribbean. It doesn't mean we're definitely going to get flooding, but that risk for some flooding is a little bit higher in the Caribbean as we work our way into December. Now, we'll go day by day in the Caribbean in just a second. I want to show you the rain that's about to move in for some of us. Now, let's shift to the north. We get back through Canada, back through the U.S., and I know some spots are kind of cut off on this map, but it gives you a feel, again, as a whole, that as far as rain goes, we're looking at, and this would include snow, of course, this time of year as we live to the north, where you see the white, things are kind of average, below average rain and or snow in where we're seeing this. Parts of Mexico lifting up to the north. California should be drier, back toward parts of the east coast of the U.S., but it doesn't mean completely dry. That's a problem with some of the seasonal forecasts that certain entities put out. You take California, for example, well, below average rain, below average snow. That doesn't mean there can't be like a huge system moving in. In fact, in California, I'm about to show you later in this video some aggressive weather moving into parts of the U.S. Now, with that said, the 3-month temperature outlook outlook, and this includes Newfoundland. So not leaving anyone out, my friends in the Atlantic region of Canada. Back through Canada, here's what's going to happen as we go through the rest of this month, December into January. Now we're going to have some above average temperatures. Mexico back toward parts of the southwest U.S. Below average parts of Canada. So that means colder weather. I did show you it will be drier, but with that said, that doesn't necessarily mean we're not going to have big snows. One thing I'm seeing is that the very Arctic air, sometimes you hear about the polar vortex, it's a little bit more unstable. So what I expect is at times we're going to get some big cold outbreaks moving by. And even though we're going to be drier than average at times, as I mentioned, doesn't mean we're not going to get some rain. So we're going to get these big cold outbreaks. And if they tie up with some of these fronts that move by, there could actually be some significant snows back through parts of the Atlantic region of Canada, New England, even back toward the Great Lakes. And maybe one of those scenarios, there's significant lake effect snow, right? With the cold air moving in, the relatively warm Great Lakes for this time of year. If it times out with some fronts, there could actually be some very significant snows with some cold outbreaks that work in December into January. This just kind of gives us a feel of what we're watching out for together. All right, let's get back to the week ahead now. Now watching this, we started to see the rain building in spots in the Eastern Caribbean. As we go throughout the week, we're going to see more of that. Spotty, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Jamaica, Cuba, Cayman Islands, hit or miss back through Central America. Now, by the time we get into tomorrow, look at the rain building. No name system. I'm not seeing a name system or anything like that out there, but these pockets of rain. And this actually kind of ties into what I was mentioning for next month. We could see a similar pattern to this. Here are some of the rain building. This is by Wednesday, very close to Trinidad and Tobago. Some more of it may be just to the east. We'll see how close this kind of gets. But point being, the Eastern Caribbean, and in particular the Southeastern Caribbean, it looks to be rather active. So we're going to keep an eye on this rain all the way through the end of the week. Some of the heaviest maybe it's just off the coast or it's on top of us, but that's a sector to watch. Increased rain, and this is very similar to a pattern we could see in December as we'll watch out for that flood threat I mentioned as we work our way into next month. Now to the north, we have these fronts that are passing by. We've got another system here. I mentioned California. Here's another system rolling in. So as we go out in time, as we take you through the week, we'll watch everything kind of on the move, these fronts passing by as we work our way into tomorrow. A system clipping by the mid-Atlantic and parts of the Midwest of the United States. Here's some of that rain here. Not so much Mexico, a little bit more Southwest U.S. New system, British Columbia, Pacific Northwest. And then as we work our way into Wednesday, that system kind of moves its way off the coast of the Mid-Atlantic, approaching Bermuda. And then we've got a couple systems here. But watch what happens here as these systems work across, are actually going to draw in some of this moisture. By the time we get into Thursday, giving a heads up, severe weather will be a potential. Even a tornado threat will be a potential right in this sector. Watching Oklahoma, for example, Texas, we'll see how this evolves right in through here because we have a system up here. It's kind of like a 1-2 punch. It helps feed in more of that moisture here, and then another system watching over toward the coast of California. So again, the pattern we have this week could actually be very similar to the pattern we have as we work our way into December. Now watching the seas, as I mentioned, over the next 2 days, the Atlantic passageways will be higher because of the rain that's going to either move into the Eastern Caribbean or at least be nearby. This here is by Thursday, watching out for some choppy seas, but as a whole, nothing too crazy, just watching those Atlantic passageways. Now I mentioned a few areas of rain we're watching. Fronts to the north, I'm just not seeing any named system. Of course, the last name system we had, Melissa. The next name on the list is Nestor. Hurricane season goes through the end of the month, but no name system in sight. Sometimes you get a little interesting spin way out there in the Atlantic. That's possible. That could get a brief name that stays over the open waters. We'll monitor for that potentially happening later this month. Even sometimes in December, there could be a little spin that stays way the heck out there that's not a threat to anyone as a whole. Now, watching out for some of the rain in some spots. This year is kind of spotty. There's been a lot of sunshine. parts of the southeastern U.S. Hit or miss, though. The Dominican Republic, Haiti, some spots could get over 50 millimeters of rain. And watching out for Jamaica and the Cayman Islands, we could have a few spots around 25 millimeters of rain if we get any rain. Puerto Rico, hit or miss back through Anguilla, St. Martin, St. Bart's the next few days, but Guadeloupe to the south, that's where we could see some spots that top out around 75 millimeters of rain or more. Here's Dominica, Barbados, Martinique, St. Lucia, St. Vincent the Grenadines, Grenada, Trinidad and Tobago. Again, a lot of the rain just to the east, but at times some of this will filter in. We will have some spots of 100 millimeters of rain or more in some locations, watching Barbados and Trinidad and Tobago in particular over the next few days for additional rainfall. That includes extreme northeastern Venezuela, northern Guyana, and northern sections of Suriname. Watching out for some of the rain, Colombia, Panama, and then kind of scattered about Guatemala and El Salvador and Belize. At times, we could get some showers, some spots, 25, maybe 50 millimeters of rain, an inch or two of rain. And then to the north with these systems rolling in, look at California, a couple of inches of rain possible. Higher terrain, though, of course, some of the snow. Watching these systems rolling by Atlantic region to Canada. And again, be mindful of that system, all that moisture that I showed you late this week in parts of the U.S., Oklahoma, back through Texas. There could be a bigger system moving in. We'll see how that evolves. So 40% chances of rain and storms today across Jamaica, 30% chance tomorrow and Wednesday. As we swing back toward the Cayman Islands, we're looking at the same thing. Rain chance builds. And again, even if there's not rain, it's going to be kind of that active scenario where there's rain nearby. As I mentioned, some of our islands, and maybe just you could almost see it in the distance. Others we could be getting dumped on. So that's why I mentioned just in the comment section, let me know what you got going on. Barbados, rain chance stays elevated. It stays elevated from St. Lucia all the way back, and it actually builds back toward Grenada. We'll be up to a 60% chance on Wednesday. St. Vincent the Grenadines, rain chance tomorrow, running at about 60%, and staying active in Martinique. Martinique, Dominica, you see that rain chance about 50%. Guadeloupe, we'll see just kind of how close some of that rain gets over the next few days, all the way through about Wednesday and Thursday. Antigua, Barbuda, some showers, mainly the passing variety around 40 to 50% chance. St. Kitts and Nevis and Montserrat, a 40% chance over the next couple of days. Anguilla and St. Bart's. Rain chance 40%. St. Martin, Saba, and Statia, 40% chance over the next couple of days in Puerto Rico. It does build to about a 50% chance on Wednesday. Isolated passing variety, British and U.S. Virgin Islands. Bahamas, mainly southern Bahamas, better chance of getting some of that rain. Otherwise, a lot of sunshine around. 20 to 30% chance as we work our way through the Turks and Caicos. A little bit higher of a chance on Wednesday in the Dominican Republic, up to a 50% chance. Haiti, we're looking at about a 30% chance. In the next couple of days in Belize, a 30% chance. Midweek, though, we are up to about a 40% chance. 30 to 40% chance Aruba, Curacao, and Bonaire. Rain chance does bump up some midweek. And then I mentioned northern Guyana in northern Suriname, that higher chance of rain. It builds tomorrow into Wednesday, both Guyana and Suriname. 20 to 30% chance as we work our way back through Cuba, Costa Rica, and Panama. A little bit higher in Panama, where that rain chance will be a notch higher than what we have in Costa Rica. Nicaragua, rain chance 30%. 30% chance today in Honduras. A 40% chance tomorrow, including the Bay Islands, Guatemala, and El Salvador. It is a little higher, 50 to 60% chance the next 2 days. Mexico City, we are mainly dry today and tomorrow. 20% chance across the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. 40% chance in northern Colombia, but higher central sections where there could be some flooding in parts of Colombia. Northern Venezuela, 50 to 60% chance. And we just kind of, from this point forward, timing out those fronts that will be moving by Bermuda. So the Caribbean, as we look at that outlook, we're looking at warmer and wetter than average conditions as we work our way into December. So we'll be monitoring that flood potential carefully. Drier in much of the U.S. and Canada, but with those cold outbreaks, that could lead to some bigger snows in some spots. I will be keeping you posted on all of that as we go forward. So thank you for being part of this weather community. I hope I see you throughout Jamaica over the next few days. Be safe and have a good week ahead.